Hi, it's Amy. Are you ready for lesson 3? Today, we're learning about understanding inflation in order to forecast interest rates. If you remember, lesson 1 was what drives interest rate, not the Fed fund, right? This is still a huge misconception. So just because they increase the Fed fund rate, that does not mean higher interest rates. And in lesson 2, what is inflation? Now that you know a little bit more about interest and inflation, we're going to put them together. Remember, when the Fed hikes the fund rate, borrowing slows down. It takes money away, making it more expensive for people to borrow. It then also creates more in savings in the banks, CDs, treasuries, etc., which equals less inflation. This is ultimately going to help the supply chain begin to improve. Here is a new term that you may not have heard of before. It's called core CPI. This is the Consumer Price Index. The core CPI is a measurement of inflation. Basically, it's used to measure economic activity. The CPI tracks the rate of change in U.S. inflation over time. This key economic metric is based on prices that consumers pay for goods and services throughout the U.S. economy. The percentage change in core CPI over a period of time is referred to as the inflation rate. Let's tie this in to how we can understand inflation in order to forecast interest rates. There are two ways that inflation is measured. First, you have the year over year, and second, the month over month. If you look at what's in yellow here in the core CPI, and that is in 2021. If you look at the white numbers here, this is the core CPI for 2022. If you notice, when core CPI drops, which is the annual rate of inflation, so do interest rates. You see that in May of 2022, the core CPI was 5.8 and interest rates were 5.75. On the next slide, we see June of 2022. This is when the Fed rate hike was 75 basis points. That was a huge increase, and everyone was assuming that with a Fed rate hike of 75 basis points, or bips, this would cause interest rates to go up. Well, you have to look at the core CPI numbers year over year. What did interest rates do? Well, if this was the year before, which is higher than what it was in 2022, the interest rates are going to follow. If it went down, then interest rates went down because we're looking at it from year over year. If we look at just July and August, we're looking at yellow here for July in 2021. If we look at how these numbers compared to 2022, then we can project they would probably go up the following year. So here's the 2022 data. And if it's increasing, then what's that mean interest rates are going to do? That's right. They were slightly down. All right, guys, stay tuned for our next lesson about lagging shelter costs and their impact on the core CPI. If you have questions, just give me a call. I love to chat.